So it's exciting to be here. This is a talk that I've never given before. Sometimes people who travel come in and they are given just the same talk that they gave before. 24 hours ago, this talk was, this talk, 24 hours ago. So it was exactly that. The talk was no more than that. And the first words on it are Johnny Carson, right? And so I apologize in advance if it's rough or rugged. I'm from the University of Michigan. This is my teaching and this is my research. My research is in the area of educational technology. I was the lead on the Sakai project. I worked with Coursera and Blackboard and Desire2Learn and Moodle. And this is the Learning Tools Interoperability Ring of Compliance back in 2009 when I was Learning Tools Interoperability, which plugged tools to all these LMSs, including X, was just a baby. No one was ever going to implement it. I promised all the major vendors that as soon as that they would implement the standard, I would tattoo their logo on my shoulder. And I, with great fanfare, tattooed them one at a time and filmed them all and told Michael Chasen of Blackboard that I walked in and I said, okay, there's a show that CEO needs a tattoo. So, those are real. People say, are they real? It's like, do you realize how hard it would be to put that on every single morning if it were fake? As Louise said, I taught a couple of very successful courses on Coursera. Lorena mentioned that I've almost touched 1 million students. The interesting thing is I've been doing this since 2012, and from 2012 till this September, I taught 750,000. Between September and today, I've taught 250,000, right? So this is a graph that's still going up, right? There's no such thing as a graph that goes up forever, right? They all are S-curves eventually. We just don't know where it's going to stop. But this curve is going up, and I believe the revenue in the last 6 weeks was close to $750,000 in 6 weeks. So it's exciting. There are things going up. Not every class on revenue. Python turns out to be the #1 search term in Coursera. The #1 search term in edX is Java. So I happen to be the first 5 search results for the most searched for item in Coursera. So your results might vary if you're going to teach like music appreciation. It won't be as lucrative right now, at least, as teaching Python. I also have my own, I know you guys don't run the official X, I don't either, but I have my own university, kind of the same sort of, I'm part of the Splinter group. I actually have my own university. I call it the University of Dr. Chuck. It's an invitation of online.stanford.edu. It's online.drchuck.com. And I have actually nearly 8,000 students that have enrolled in my courses on my own website that is just me. I give Mozilla Open badges if you finish the course on my site. Because I also think that I'm not such a... I love the fact that Coursera has 15 million eyeballs and edX has 5 million eyeballs that I can show my stuff to, but I also don't want to be so beholden to them that I have no other choices. So this is the rough outline of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to really avoid technology and just talk about sort of pedagogy and techniques for engagement. But first, I want to talk about Johnny Carson. How many people have watched the Johnny Carson show? Okay. Right. How many people watch the Jimmy Kimmel show? Okay. So for those people that watch Johnny Carson, how many watched it at least 2 days a week, most weeks? How many people watch Jimmy Kimmel more than once a week? Okay. So, to explain, Johnny Carson is the host of The Tonight Show in the 70s and 80s, and Jimmy Kimmel is the current host of The Tonight Show. So this Tonight Show is supposed to be a talk show that engages you and makes you want to have, at 11 o'clock, life stop, and everyone's supposed to stop and watch The Tonight Show. And in the old days, it was a family affair. Right before bed, you'd go see Johnny Carson. Actually, at the end of the news, you'd come on and you watch Johnny Carson, and you would fall asleep. You wouldn't watch the whole show. You'd watch the first few things, and then you'd go to sleep. And Johnny Carson became part of our lives. And I don't think that Jimmy Kimmel will ever be part of our lives in the way that Johnny Carson was. And I'm going to show you 2 little clips that give you a sense, and I want you to compare and contrast these 2 clips to give a sense of why one person became sort of part of our family. Another person is like, if it's a good show, I'll watch it on YouTube later, right? Same television show, same potential, both super talented people. So I'm going to show you 2 clips. Let's make sure that the audio works. So first I will show you a clip from Jimmy Fallon.
Everybody knows that Monet's got a killer fastball and a wicked curve, but not everyone knows that I have a reputation as a great, great hitter. Not a baseball hitter, but a wiffle ball hitter. So right now, Monet's going to pitch wiffle balls, and I'm going to hit them. 10 pitches total. Strikes count for Monet. Hits count for me. Balls don't count. Whoever has the most strikes or hits at the end of 10 pitches is the champion. Yes. The free cheesesteak. Scott, that's not where the catcher stands, is it? All right, Monet, get ready. Scott, don't be... This is unbelievable. You came out with an attitude as soon as you came out. All right, 10 pitches.
Okay, so that's a minute and a half of Jimmy Fallon. Now I'm going to show you a minute and a half of Johnny Carson, for those of you who are not familiar with Johnny Carson.
My first guest tonight in a local Kansas newspaper, and she sounded like a more than remarkable woman. She's 105 years old. We thought you might like to meet her. She's from Ellsworth, Kansas. Would you welcome, please, Mildred Holt. Someplace in New York at that time. Are you really 105? 105 years old. When were you born?
1882.
You are the oldest person I have ever met and ever had on this show.
That's why it is at home. I'm always the oldest one there.
Okay. So what I want you to think about just for a minute is the difference in affect between those two people doing exactly the same thing, encountering someone of interest that they might want to share with a worldwide audience. There was some dramatic differences between how they both approached an interesting person, a young woman who's a wiffle ball pitcher, and a woman who's very, very old. But point out for a moment, like, what's the major difference between Johnny Carson and Jimmy Kimmel?
I felt the first person, whose name I forgot him, it was mostly about himself. With Johnny Carson, it was about the other person.
Correct. Anybody ever sort of add to that?
Kindness.
Kindness? What did Jimmy... Oh, repeat the first person that... Jimmy Kimmel was all about himself, and Johnny Carson was about the other person. Right? So, what was the very first interaction between Jimmy Kimmel and the young woman? What? Yeah.
Intimidation.
In her face, right? Right? In her face. Getting in her face. What was the first interaction between Johnny Carson and the... Welcoming, love, affection, making her comfortable, not throwing down, right? So, and then let me ask just one more question. How involved was the audience in the Johnny Carson piece? What were we? How did we become, to what extent were we part of what was going on in the Johnny Carson show? And to what extent were we part of what was going on in the Jimmy Kimmel show? We are the audience. We're the people who are paying the money and watching the ads. So what extent were we involved? I mean, some of you, go ahead.
Carson, totally.
With Carson, totally. With Carson, you were an equal. Your presence was as important as his presence, and perhaps more important. He felt his job was to bring us into the television studio as if, and my wife always would say, I would love to just have dinner with that dude and have him on the other side of the table and listen to him. Do you really want to have dinner with Jimmy Kimmel? What do you think he's going to do at dinner?
Dominate the conversation.
And tell you how great he is.
Yeah.
Right? So, the lesson in this room is that as a teacher, you have to be Johnny Carson. You don't want to be Jimmy Kimmel. Right? You can be amazing, but you shouldn't build a wall between you and your students. You want them to feel like they're part of what's going on. I think we're going to hear the same thing echoed in our second presentation. So, okay. Should have told you that.
Didn't really. Sorry about that.
He's on.
You should have stopped me earlier. I can be interrupted at any time.
They just told me now.
Oh, okay.
The other way.
It's got a flippy thing.
Yeah.
It's only too easy. Okay, that's right. You think I'd be... But I'm not. But now I'm recorded on the stream. Welcome to our fans from around the world, streaming fans from around the world. Okay, so here's some recording tips, right? And part of it is that you should think of this like office hours rather than a lecture, right? A lecture is you're trying to project, you're trying to create a big... Office hours is you're within a foot or two of the person, right? And you're listening to them and you're feeling what they're feeling and you're reacting to them. And so channel your office hours. Mistakes are really important. Eye contact is unimportant. We think that we're supposed to stare at this little black circle called the camera. And we as lecturers, we don't stare at the students continuously because that would be creepy. And so we do things like we walk around and compose our thoughts, and then we look out to see if the audience is with us, and then we walk around and compose our thoughts. Online, you've got to do the same thing. It turns out that because we're transferring so much information, staring at the person while you're talking to them makes it so they don't understand you as well if you just stare and stare and stare. At CNN, they stare all the time, but that's because it's CNN and they're reading from a teleprompter, right? So you got to learn to give yourself a break because we're not professional news readers. Drinking, and I mean drinking, is a good thing to do. Always have a glass of water. So if you flip a slide down, you say, crap, I forgot what that slide was and why I had it in this order, take a drink of water. Don't say, crap, I forgot what it was. So I drink so much during my lectures that my students make fun of it. They're like, okay, what's in the cup? And the answer is what's in the cup is time, right? When I need a moment, drink, put it down. So be ready to drink. Video quality is overrated. I think we're going to hear that also. A lot of people in this biz are trying to tell us there's got to be the best studio with the best lighting. It's overrated. Horrible video is horrible video, but as long as it's reasonable and it's not terrible, it's good enough. What we've compromised, they kind of asked me to do the lectures now in studios, but I get to add little glue bits, like little hellos, little 30-second things that I can tape anywhere with a phone. So I intersperse kind of formal stuff with informal stuff. And just let things happen. So here's something that happened in the middle of a lecture. Let's get rid of this. Here's something that happened in a little bit of lecture, and I just let it happen. And I didn't take it out. From one of my lectures, you started at 12, you're kind of foolish, right? So you started at 1. Look right there. And you go like, oh, great. So now I'm going to decrypt it. I'll start at 1. Here's the plain text. This should be PP. That's the plain text. So I'll start with U. If it's 1, going to go up, and it's T. And the second one is P. So go up, and it's O, T, O. Keep going, it says toast. So you say to yourself, no, that's a word, so it must be it. Well, hello. What are you doing here? Do I still have any students? This is the cat. This is my Eddie cat. You guys come up into my office and look. So, do you know anything about encryption? You
by encryption? So you use a shift of 1, and then you go from the encryption text up to the plain text. Okay, you are clearly not interested in my lecture, so that was my cat. Hello. Sorry, can't open the window for you because I'm doing a lecture. If you started at 12, you're kind of foolish, right?
Oops.
So you started at 1, and you go like, oh.
Okay, so let things happen. Take advantage of them. Make mistakes. Don't edit things out. I love leaving mistakes in lectures. I'll talk about this from a constructivist perspective. Every new cohort finds those mistakes and tears me apart and yells at me about them, but that is part of the students constructing their own understanding of the material, to argue about whether I'm right or wrong and then point out that I'm wrong. This is a prize that every new cohort finds all the mistakes in my lectures. Please leave them in there. Be careful of experts. We've been doing this for such a short period of time, there really are no experts, but there are plenty of people that would represent themselves as experts, right? And so you have like instructional designers. They're nice people, and you can talk to them, and you can take input from them, but you can't cede the course to an instructional designer. You have got to understand it. If the instructional designer gives you some advice that's good, great, take it. But don't say, oh, I am totally unexpert, having been in a lecture hall for 40 years, that somehow in this new field, I'm not the expert. In my world, I am the expert, and the instructional designer is a Johnny-come-lately who just graduated, read some book on this stuff, and they're going to throw this book down my throat, and I'm like, go away. Like, if you can help me, but don't pretend that you know more about teaching than I do. Producers, video people, like a guy behind the camera said, you know, the average video should be 7 minutes. I said, I'm going to let that go, but the next time you say that, I'm going to choke you to death, okay? Because you're 26 years old, you've never talked a day in your life, and you read something somewhere that says that's truth, and now you're acting like an expert. Shut up, right? So that doesn't mean that short lectures are not good. It just means that that person who's just mouthing some words they read somewhere else is not an expert. There are no experts. Administration people, so I won't say anything bad about them because it's being recorded. The MOOC platform vendor staff, right? The MOOC platform vendor staff. We can't trust them anymore because they're all in the mood to make some money. So when they say best practice, the question is, what was the question, right? Is it best practice to improve teaching or best practice to improve revenue? But they don't tell you that. And increasingly, the best practice that they're telling you about is the best practice to maximize revenue. Doesn't mean revenue is bad. It just means you've got to be careful by taking advice from experts who are thinking about revenue. We got to think about teaching, and if we do it well, revenue comes. We've got to not connect ourselves to maximizing revenue. We've got to connect ourselves to maximizing teaching, and if the money comes, the money comes. Big data types. These people annoy the crap out of me. Guy walks up to me in the hallway. Hopefully you're not watching. I won't use the person's name. Says, I got an idea to use your course. I'm like, yeah? He says, I would like to redo some of your assignments to add a reflective phase to the assignment. And then I'd like to do a survey to see how well the reflected part of their understanding of the material. And I'm like, no. Because this guy already has the journal article written, right? The title is, Reflection is Awesome, right? And all they're just sit there and they get some graph. They'll throw away 50 graphs that say reflection was useless, but they'll find one graph that says reflection is a great idea. Bam, journal article, right? So the big data types, I want to draw this picture as, firm hypothesis. Did the analysis hypothesis or disagree? If it agrees, then publish paper. If it disagrees, get more data and run more analysis. If the analysis agrees with your hypothesis, publish paper. Otherwise, go up, get more data, and rerun analysis. And they just do that. And so it's like all these people walk in with preconceived notions, including the people who are trying to increase revenue. They walk in with preconceived notions. In some ways, the big data is noise. So if you stare at noise long enough, you can reach any conclusion that you like. So be careful of experts. Course scope is really important. You really should teach a course that you already understand well. The first thing that you do in a course is slow it down by a factor of 2, because these are part-time learners, you don't want to lose them, right? So if I do it in 10 weeks, it needs to be 20 weeks. But then what you do is you remove anything that you put in this class that is just just there for rigor's sake. So sometimes we in the curriculum committee or we in the faculty, we make a course tough to make it a tough course so that, like, we'll sit there and say, oh, that course ought to grade really hard so I can know which of those master students will be good PhD students by looking at their grade in that course. So sometimes we make courses hard just to sort people. It's not an outrageous thing to do, but it is an outrageous thing to do in a MOOC. So anytime there's rigor for rigor's sake, eliminate it. You must value the student's time. Even time they're taking tests should be something you value and you think in your mind how to make best use of their time when they're otherwise not going to the bar or not doing something else and they're sitting and taking your test. You should be thankful for that, and you should make sure that test is actually interesting and useful to them. I intersperse my class with a lot of bonus materials. And this is all just stuff that I have. I luckily have a whole wide library of stuff because I have an old TV background, and I have this IEEE Computer monthly column where I interview people. But I put all this stuff that's sort of barely related. Let me just show you a tiny little bit of this one. So this is Pooja Sankar, who is the founder of a Piazza, which is a threaded discussion wiki kind of thing, and a lot of people are familiar with it. A lot of schools use this thing. So I happen to have interviewed her as part of my IEEE thing, and so I just sort of like put Pooja in week 3 when we're really talking about variables, right?
So the undergrad, one of very few women in computer science in India, top engineering school at IIT, and I had actually studied in Bellgrove high school till college, did not know how to speak to boys, was told never allowed to speak to boys. So when I went to college, I didn't know how to speak to boys, and all my classmates were boys. Studied by myself, felt very isolated.
And so she made a company that made it so people were engaged. Now, is it random that I picked Pooja Sankar as week number 2 in my first programming class? Absolutely not random, right? She is talking about being a woman in technology and being successful. So if I'm thinking about trying to say welcome all the women and give them a reason to stay, I have an interview with Daphne and I have an interview with Pooja, and they're like in the first 3 weeks, right? And you know, whatever, it's like I want to double welcome those that are not just, white males, right? And so I pick the bonus materials to send subtle messages. Rather than sending obvious messages, I send subtle messages. And so I could put Pooja anywhere in the course, but I make sure she's in the first 2 weeks because she emphasizes things that I think are on the minds of many of my students. And it has nothing to do with writing code, right? It's like, oh, we're in the code class. Oh, this is kind of interesting. I think I'll sit back and relax. And yet my message is coming through in the mere organization of the course in a way that Pooja, so she can say a message that I cannot. Assessments. This is probably where I spend the most of my time in research work. And assessments are probably the most important part of your class, and I think to most they get the least attention. They can't just be quizzes, and they can't just be peer graders. Even though the experts will tell you that peer grading is 63% as good as 23% versus a square root of 2 over 2. Whatever. No, peer grading is not the ideal thing for grading stuff. Students don't like peer grading. If you can use peer grading as a form of increasing communication, great. So all my peer grading assignments are more about communication than assigning a score, right? Because peers don't like people. I have a peer grading system that I built myself, and we had this flagging capability, which I don't understand why all peer grading systems don't have a flagging capability. So they could draw to the attention of the teaching staff when they thought something grievous happened. Let me give you an example of the kind of things that people in peer grading systems like the Coursera and edX probably don't even have the ability to get this information, but mine does. So people will flag the following. I put up my assignment. It was graded by 4 people on a 5-point scale. 3 of the people gave me a 5, and 1 of the people gave me a 4. I would like you to eject that last person from this class because of their bad judgment. These people are unworthy to be in this class because they gave me a 4. I deserve a 5. Look at those other 3 people that gave me a 5. This is words they write to me in the flag dialog box, right? They're furious because someone gave them a 4, and I keep only the high score. So the 4 didn't even participate in their grade, right? So be careful about peer grading as like the panacea that makes this all easy, right? So luckily I'm teaching programming. I try to make every one of my assignments a puzzle that is fun to do over and over and over and over again. right? And then you go, I got it, right? And so it's like, I'm not making them excessively hard. I make them relatively easy, but there's a puzzle aspect to them. They can often see how they might solve this problem by hand, but then when they try to solve it by hand, they go like, oh, wow, I should really write a program to do this. So I spend a lot of time on these assessments. The other thing I do on these assessments is especially in the beginning, I put like coaching logic into the assessment. I write my assessments in PHP. I don't write them in some dumb assessment environment because I need code, I need choices. So I have moments where I look at the program and it won't use like the raw input, and I'll like put up a little dialog box that says, maybe you should use raw input, right? It's the kind of thing you would look over the shoulder of the student and look at their code and say, you know, we covered raw input in the lecture and maybe you should use that, right? So I've got this little creature living inside the autograder, which is really me, speaking to them in an alert box, right? So compare this and contrast this with Pearson's My Math Lab, right? Does Pearson's My Math Lab, is it got a face? Is it got a name? Does it ever talk to you? No. It's just evil, unfeeling, humanity-destroying robot. My assessments are not. My assessments are an extension of me. Right? They're very custom, they're very much about me, they're very much about my creativity, and something that's a lot of fun. When you first roll out a course, my assessments, because I wrote them and I didn't get them from often broken. So the students are like yelling in the forums. I'm like, hang on, I gotta fix it. Okay, wait, try this. Try that. You can't believe how much the students loves that the person who wrote the assessment is apologizing for its brokenness and at 2 o'clock in the morning fixing the assessment. That only happens in the first round because by the time you're done with the first cohort, assessments are rock solid. But it is kind of fun to watch the students who help everybody and do debug printing and do view sourcing and take screenshots and help you debug your assessments, and that turns into a joyous thing in the first one. Hopefully, I already mentioned valuing the student's time. Cheating is another thing that I had to learn early on. Thankfully, Peng Wei at Coursera and others were good mentors with me on this, and they just said, forget it. Forget about cheating. Just don't think about it. Build assessments that value students' time. This is where I learned that was back in 2012. Value their time and do not build a wall. Don't over-test. Don't over-try to make it so they can't cheat. Okay? Just build the best possible assessment that will make the student engage and learn. Assume a learner wants to learn. Don't assume that the learner is a criminal. Because it turns out if they're a criminal, they're going to figure out 1 billion ways to break your system. And if they're not a criminal, everything that you did is a block. It screws them up. So quit building these little things. Like, okay, maybe if the MOOC provider has something to verify identity, trust the MOOC provider, but don't go any further than what the MOOC provider already gives you. You don't need to build a moat. I did a thing I want to write up one of these days, and it'd be like one of my few journal articles every 10 years, whether I need to write one or not. I wrote in my internet history class, I wrote this exam, but it had a few diabolical features in it. What I did in this exam is I picked a series of questions, and out of 40 questions, about 11 of the questions had wrong answers for which you were awarded 100% credit. In the security business, we call this a honeypot. It is something that people will stumble into. So the idea is in this, there was like 6,000 different ways to get a perfect score because of this, right? And only one of those 6,000 was the actual right answer, which means if you got close to a perfect, you could like get all right and 2 wrong and get a perfect score. All right and get a different 2 wrong and get a perfect score. So what I was trying to do at this point, because I had every set of scores in the exact time that that score arrived, is these are like viruses. I was infecting individual students with what they thought was a perfect score. And if they handed their perfect score to anybody else, I knew who they handed it to, right? And in a 2-week period, this is time here, that's the cumulative scores. Question? Oh, well, you're appreciating my diabolicalness, my evil, my diabolicalness, yes.
So.
Yes. Well, keep going, okay.
Waiting for the punchline.
No, it's coming on the next slide. Okay, so what this is saying is this is a 2-week period. It's a hack. I just wrote this myself like an hour. So this is time, this is cumulative number of people, and ideally if at any given time the likelihood of a particular key is random, it should be a straight line, right? And this turns out to be there were 1,019 people. This was the most common exam. 1,019 people got this particular key. The 8s are the honeypot answers. Some of the honeypot answers were more plausible than others. Some of the honeypot answers are totally implausible. Be me being a bad teacher. And so this person had a perfect score. This key is a perfect score with 3 honeypot catches, right? And so some of the honeypots were, you could kind of pick either A or B, and they were kind of both reasonable, right? So there was about 82 of these different keys that got moved around. And so the question becomes, what does it look like when somebody cheats? Well, that's what it looks like when somebody cheats, right? So this is a 2-week period. This is a randomly arrivable set of things which actually gets one more question wrong than that previous one that I just showed you. It was the 7th most likely answer key. With 28 people over a 2-week period got this answer key. But in a 10-minute period, 15 people got the exact same answer key. Right? So, what can we assume? We can probably assume this is a group of people on chat doing one question at a time. Some poor sucker had to test first what the answer to 6 was. And everybody got the same quiz. No randomization, no nothing. Everybody got the same quiz. It's a honeypot, right? I'm setting them up to trap them. So they say, oh, A, looks like A is the right answer for 1. Everyone hits A. B is the right answer for 2. Everybody hits B. Out of 5,000 people, probably 50 people cheated. So the answer is, who cares? That's the conclusion. I had no idea how much data I would see here, but the answer is, even in the earliest heady days of Coursera, cheating was a very rare thing, so it wasn't worth my time to think about. So they were right. They told me not to think about it. Okay, the other thing that you need to do is be alive and be present. And you'd be surprised at how little effort it takes to seem to be alive and present in the class. I have good teaching assistants. I put in probably 10 forum posts a week. That's it. They tell me where to go. But 0 forum posts versus 10 forum posts is a major difference. Major, major difference. Well placed, people say, I can't believe that Dr. Chuck from on high has appeared to answer my forum post. I'm like, yeah, I'm around. It's okay. I'm just kind of busy this week, you know, and well-placed forum posts. And of course, my thing, which I just don't understand why no one else does it, maybe you could tell me why no one else does it, is the thing I call face-to-face office hours. And in face-to-face office hours, do I have this one? I send email to 500,000 of my closest friends, and I say I will be at a coffee shop in Washington, D.C. between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Wednesday, blah, 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 blah. And somewhere between 1 and 40 people show up. And we chat for a while, and I take a little video. And I put the video back in the class. Just last week, I was at Bletchley Park for what I called the first ever class reunion, where I gave people actually about a month notice that I was going to be there on October 31st. Well, hello. We are at Bletchley Park, where computer science, internet, history, technology, and all of computation started here at Bletchley Park, and we've had a very special, record-setting office hours, and I want you to meet your fellow students, okay? So here we go. So, howdy, state your name, and... Hi, I'm Steve. Well, also, but you should say that you're somebody special. You're not just Steve.
Well, I'm one of the mentors for the Python course, all of them.
So welcome, Steve. It's an honor to have worked with you all these years, right? Steve is the one that does all the hard work. I get all the credit, and people like Steve and other mentors, they actually do the hard work. So thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for inviting me down with your help. It was brilliant.
Yeah. So say hi to the rest of the class.
Hi, I'm Benoit.
Okay. That's 10 minutes, so I won't show you all of it. And that sort of probably leads into the mentors, the whole concept of, let me just Teaching assistants and mentors. So these are very special people. Some of them have been with me since 2012. They're volunteers. They're just amazing. I've tried to take face-to-face teachers who are good, or grad student instructors, and bring them in. It generally doesn't work. The whole skill set is different. We find them in the class. They turn into natural leaders in the class. They're the ones that challenge you the most in the class, and then they're the ones you convert into teaching assistants. They need attention. I spend more time paying attention to the teaching assistants and talking to them than I do talking to the students in the class, because they're so important. I think they're probably the weakest link in our current world that we don't compensate these folks. And some of my teaching assistants have sent me an email. She said she'd spent 50 hours for absolutely nothing. I paid for that guy. It turns out to be unemployed. And I paid his travel from Edinburgh to Bletchley because he couldn't afford it. But I wanted to see him. And so it was a small amount of money to me to bring him down. And one of my goals is to have dinner with every single one of my teaching assistants, regardless of where in the world that they live. But it's a scary thing because they're so passionate and they work so hard for us, and they're not compensated, and I think that's a concern. Constructivism, I sort of mentioned this before. The students need blank spaces in which to sort of emerge into. And so it's really great when the class starts with empty forums and the students construct stuff. Criticizing me is one of the things they do, creating their own ideas. I'm not like the pure constructivist that like, it's all supposed to be blank, but some of it has to be blank. There has to be spaces for the students to move into and populate and own and colonize and make their own. And that's a real important part of it. And that's part of the reason that we don't edit out all the mistakes, because part of the constructivist is the constructing of the reaction to what's going on that I've pre-recorded potentially 3 or 4 years ago. But each cohort starts fresh. This is the moment of constructivist. And that's something that as we do cohorts more and more and more and at faster and faster paces, you realize how important the cohort is. It's not that the cohort's important. What's important is that emptiness is what's important. That they start empty and they have to add to it. The first session, for anybody who's going to do this, we were just talking at Michigan about like just how we can get people to survive the first session, because it's the worst. It's the hardest thing. You think you build it, you build all your assessments, and then something breaks, and they start with pitchforks and torches, and you're just, I hate this. I mean, and so you're fixing bugs and finding problems, and if you don't react quickly, things get ugly really fast, and then you say to yourself, why did I waste my time? Why am I giving this away for free? And these people are so critical of me. So I think we have to understand the feeling that a faculty member gets the first time through this, and the first time they see a forum post, or the first time someone questions their authority, or whatever, and it's a really scary, scary time. I just know this, and I know that any first session, as soon as there's a bug in something, I'm like on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I got little email things that send me email as soon as my autograder has a bug. I run this as if I'm like a little mini Twitter, right? I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll work on it later. It's like, no, I get an email every 15 minutes when there's a log file problem with my autograder, because I just don't want it to go downhill really fast, because once it goes downhill, 225,000 people going downhill, that's a lot of downhill, and it's not very fun at all. Second and following sessions are the payoff. When I first started thinking about doing a cohort every 3 weeks, I thought, oh, this is terrible, because we put so much energy into every cohort. But then what I realized was, I'm Anthony Bourdain. And I don't have to run the show, but all I have to do is show up. And it turns out that I show up simultaneously in all the cohorts at the same time. So when I publish in office hours, I'm publishing it for all the cohorts. So if I have 15 classes, it's okay, because I just did office hours for all 15. Turns out there's no more effort to do office hours for 15 classes than it is for one. They're always running continuously, so you send email to everybody, say there's going to be office hours, yay! Then here's another week later, here's the video for the office hours. And it doesn't matter how many courses I'm teaching, because it's for all of them. So that's kind of cool. So at some point, you're kind of like this social coordinator, this sort of silly person that's leading the charge, and it doesn't matter how many courses you do after a while, after the second session. After the second session, they very much run themselves, other than talking to your teaching assistants, but you still can be socially involved in them. So one of my ideas that didn't, did I just close that? That's okay, open recent. one of the ideas that I came up with that I really haven't done anything with because I got busy, but you'll get the idea really fast. This was an idea that I have that I didn't have enough energy to really pull through on. My name is Charles Sevens. I'm a faculty member of the University of Michigan School of Information. I've also taught over 500,000 students around the world since 2012 using a platform called Coursera. When I travel, I invite my students to what I call face-to-face office hours. Hello, Chuck here. So you get the idea who I'm imitating there. That would be Anthony Bourdain, of course. I've installed an exact color from a YouTube video of the thing. And this is a little cool gadget. This is called a gimbal, and it's the world's most awesome selfie stick in that it auto levels the camera. And you can walk around and be your own camera person. And I would sit in buses and airplanes and put suction cups on the plane windows and take pictures of myself in airplanes and walk through airports with this thing, hoping that I don't get tackled by security. And I was trying to make my own reality show, basically, right? And it just was too much effort every single time. But if you watch that whole thing, it goes, and I go on this Lake Cuomo. We're on this ferry. We're eating dinner. I've got 3 cameras on the dinner. Everyone spoke Italian except me. That was the funniest thing. This American guy sitting on the plate. I had suction cup to the dinner, another thing. All Anthony Bourdain. It's like Anthony Bourdain's super low budget Anthony Bourdain. Because I think that part of this is a social engagement. Part of the thing is making this exciting for them and making it fun. Yeah, okay, I already talked about that. Specializations are a new thing. A new thing. They are scary in that I think we made a mistake over committing on the time for us to deliver the courses that make up a specialization. I do think that the notion that I can be a curriculum, 4-course curriculum with a easy intro and then a more difficult and challenging. As a teacher, I feel really good about the credential that comes out the end of a specialization, that I actually am asserting that they actually have some skills. So if I do only 5 weeks and you get a certificate at the end of 5 weeks, it's like, man, you might have just survived that. Python for 5 weeks, but Python for 25 weeks, that actually might have some meaning in the job force, right? And so I think that this is where we start becoming curriculum experts rather than just teaching experts. And so specializations, I think, are where this is going to get real, and I think these credentials will gain value and traction even more than they already have. And they've gained a lot of traction already, but I think people will do a lot of hiring based on these 1-course certificates, and they'll be a little disappointed, but I think the specializations will be more useful as certificates. Commons. I mentioned the concept of constructivism. All my courses are open education resources. All the books are free. I sell a book for $10 on Amazon, which is, I make $2 on each one of these books because I publish through CreateSpace, do all the self-publishing. By demonstrating the gift of your resources and telling the students you want them to walk away with them, you're communicating that there is a commons and that you've invested in that commons, right? And then the courses are collective commons. And so part of the way you make a commons is you pre-invest in the commons. And you say, I am taking something of value to me and I'm putting it in the commons. Will you match me? And so the whole idea of open source and openness is the notion of a commons that then creates a social need to match the commons. And so my book, this very book, which I got from an open Python book that Alan Downey wrote, and I adapted it to throw away all the computer science and add only data analysis to, has now been translated into English, Spanish, Korean, and Chinese. The Spanish and Korean are available in the App Store, in Amazon under CreateSpace for $10. And these wonderful people just said, could I please translate your book? And they did. And I said, could I put it up on CreateSpace? And they said, sure. I said, I'll give all the money to charity that we make off of this book. They said, sure. And it's like 2 to 3 months of effort on people's part to translate my book and literally give it back to me. And that's the power of the commons. I threw the book in the middle, so that's my Annie. And other people feel the urge then to throw into the comments because they know that I'm not motivated to steal their stuff that they put in the comments, because I've already demonstrated that I'm not in a stealing mood, because I did the giving, right? My slides have been translated into 31 languages because of this. I simply put everything up on Google Docs and I give permission to anyone who asks to any language, and they just translate the slides. And there's been no fighting for 2 years now. People just translate the slides. They ask for permission, I give it to them, and they can start working on the Malaysian translation, and away they go. So,
Check that out.